Hey boys, with Josh Acheampong breaking into the first team, I wanted to do just a fun little video before we got the Ajax preview coming tomorrow, right? With our game on Wednesday. Just five more names I think, will either break into the team, make their debut, or maybe get their senior goal, that sort of thing, right? I don't think the players on this list are quite as ready as a Championn. Maybe there's one player that we'll get onto, but he's certainly the one who's broke into the team, and with Colwell's injury, he's the one I think will progress and really make, one of the positions his own. So we can get into it now. So obviously the first name is Joshua Championn. This is the academy player, I think is going to have a really good season and really cement himself, as a main centre back or right back, depending how Maresca wants to utilise him, right? And depending how his season goes, he might make it onto the plane to the World Cup. You never know. Look, he probably won't unless he has an outstanding season, right? Because I think Tuchel kind of knows the team he wants now and the team to call up. But potentially for the Euros, in 2028, something like that. He's still so young for the centre back position. Only 19, and we saw glimpses of him last season. Right, he made his debut. He was slowly creeping into the team, but I think with Colwell's injury, it's why the club hierarchy didn't quite want to go out and get a centre back. They felt a Championn was ready enough to make that position his, not necessarily the left centre back role, but definitely either central centre back, right centre back, or even right back inverting in. It depends how Maresca wants to utilise him. But again, this is a versatile player, right? He's a sort of hybrid centre back, right back. Right now, as it stands, I don't know if he's quite a centre back. We saw that in the Forest game. He did struggle if he's a physical centre back. I think if he has a bit more help, or say we play Reece James in midfield next to Caicedo, right? We could play a Joshua Championn as that sort of tucked in, inverted right back, centre back sort of role, similar to, whatever you want to call it, garden wall defender, similar to how like Calafiori, Timber works at Arsenal, right? So potentially that could be his long-term position, but we'll see how it goes, right? But he's listed as 6'3". Now, I don't know if anyone saw the post-match interview in the game against Forest when he was next to Reece James, right? The guy looks so tall. Like, I don't know if he's had a growth spurt, because obviously he's still growing. So I think he's probably closer 6'4", bordering on 6'5". I think he's more sort of Van Dijk's height. I don't quite think he's 6'3" anymore. If you see his height, especially when he's playing, he looks so tall and sort of lanky, right? But look, great athleticism, great technique. He's really good at progressing the ball out from the defence, right? So he's perfect for playing as, a ball-playing defender. The modern centre-back, everyone needs to be comfortable in possession, right? They have to be able to pass out from the back, not just hoof it up, like they did back 20 years ago. So, look, he's perfect for the modern game, perfect for Maresca's system. I think Maresca sort of trusts him now and he's going to play more. So he'll probably start against Ajax, but it'll be interesting to see his overall development. I think this season is the season where, he really explodes, adds super, a lot of value to his market cap, right? And more importantly, he's a Chelsea player now. He's not going to be looked to go on loan or potentially even sell him for pure profit. This guy's a Chelsea player, and only up and onwards with a champion, right? Next player, Reggie Walsh. Everyone knows Reggie Walsh. Played quite a few games in the Conference League, right? Broke the record with the youngest debut for the Conference League or just any European competition. I think it was like 16 years, 200 days, something like that. Today is his birthday, and there's another player with the same birthday that we'll get onto. But so he has just turned 17 today as recording this video, 20th of October, right? So freshly 17. He's probably, trying to think how he might line up in the Chelsea system. Probably maybe that like Enzo Fernandez role. He's sort of like an 8-10. I don't think the club or the academy see him as a 6. I think you waste a lot of his talents. He's got great box crashing ability, and because he's so technically gifted, and the decision making, the composure, the anticipation, right, all the mental attributes of his game, they're so high for his age. I think it's a waste playing him a bit deeper. He can get involved in the attacking final third a lot more, and he picks smart passes, right? We saw that when he was playing, considering he was 16 in midfield, it was a hard position to be 16 at, it's very physical. He didn't look out of shape. I think he's definitely a Maresca kind of player, right? Super tidy on the ball, really technical, can glide past players. and doesn't rush anything. You know, he's really good on the ball. And again, he's sort of these technical English players that are coming through, similar to, you know, like Palmer, Foden, these sort of players who are really like astute and calm on the ball. I think Reggie Walsh is another sort of player like that. So I think we're going to see more of him this season. You know, with the Champions League, it's a bit harder for him to break into the team. You know, if we were, say, in the Conference League or Europa League, you know, this guy would be starting a lot more games. But I think because we are in the Champions League, it's going to be a bit harder for him. And we've got, you know, quite a lot of midfielders, but a lot of them are injured. So this could be his route into the team as well. You know, Maresca's a big fan of him. I think most Chelsea fans are a big fan of him. You can see there's a lot there. It just depends what sort of position we want to really utilise this guy. Do we want to use him as a box-to-box? Do we want to use him maybe as like an advanced playmaker slash box crasher who gets a bit more involved in the final third? You know, let's see how he progresses. But I think Reggie Walsh, he's here for a big season. And if not, he'll be going on loan and getting, you know, much needed senior minutes because he's good enough. I think he's too good for the academy already at 17. So, you know, let's see what happens. But I think this season could be a really big one for him. Next up, Landon Emenalo. You know, this is the son of the former director as well, Michael, right? And this guy, with the international break, he was training with the first team as well. We've got another name on the list who was also training with the first team, right? But look, 17 years old, and I think the best attribute about this guy is his versatility. You know, he's so intelligent, he can play pretty much across 4 or 5 different positions to a good standard. Previously, I think the club saw him as a sort of left-sided centre-back or a 6 sort of position, right? But, you know, this season in the academy, he's been playing as a left-back, inverting into midfield. So again, is this going to be sort of long-term Cucurella's replacement, you know? Say maybe 5 years from now, is this the guy who's going to really lock down that left back position? Potentially. I mean, he's got all the technical attributes there. And what I like about him is as well, he's a very combative player, you know, excellent in the duels, very good tenacity, work rate, works really hard for the team. But, you know, he's not just one of these players who runs a lot, sort of like a Gallagher. He is also really good on the ball. And I think, look, let's see where we want to develop him. I think the club maybe see him as an inverted left back now. He's going to typically start as a left back, but when we're in possession, he'll invert into midfield, look to get, you know, progressed into the attack, similar to what Cucurella does. But if not, he is 5'11". He can probably maybe get to 6 foot, 6'1", depending on how much he grows, right? He's still only 17. So he could be, you know, a centre back, but I think we waste a lot of his qualities at centre back, which is why he's been sort of shifted to left back or plays that sort of 6 position. Don't know if I quite see him as an 8, and I don't know if the academy sees him as an 8, but he can play there. So, you know, it's not a bad thing that he can play in multiple positions. And again, I think he's been training with the first team. Maybe he gets his sort of debut in the Carabao Cup, but I think again this is going to be a big season for him. He was also on the bench in a couple of the games, right? So look, he's going to make his debut this season probably, and if not, he'll go on loan next season. But I think, you know, this is another player who's got a big, exciting future ahead of him, and we're only going to see more as the season develops, right? Up next, someone who's been getting quite a lot of praise and hype on social media as well, Ryan Kavuma-McQueen. You know, if you didn't watch my video, I did rate and I went through every single academy player. It's about 45 minutes long. It's a very long video, but if you do want to learn more about maybe some of the academy talents, you're not too sure who are the sort of world class, you know, elite players. Spoiler alert, I put this guy in world class. I think he's that good. Definitely that talented, right? And I think that's probably why the club were okay with Rio going to Liverpool. I mean, look, they weren't okay with it, but we did have another world-class sort of left winger who can be better and, you know, work his way into the Chelsea senior team, right? I think the club see, you know, McQueen as that guy. They're already touting him and lining him up to get his professional contract as well. We just secured Reggie Walsh's, so I think the players we got in the academy now, that Chelsea are very, you know, confident and keen to tie them down, and there's no mistake why. You know, this guy, he's quite a unique profile, right? So he can play on either wing, left wing or right wing, right? But he's definitely more suited to left wing. But what's interesting with him, you know, a lot of the players now, we like the inverted winger, inside forward sort of, you know, position role. But he's a strong-footed left winger, right? So he'll cut in, but he likes operating with his left foot, you know, and it's not as a typical winger running to the byline, you know, crossing it in. similar to like a Ryan Giggs or players who used to play in like a 4-4-2 system. It's not like that. He still cuts inside and runs at the attack or the defense. Sorry, but if you watch some of his clips, he's unlocked like this super interesting and unique shot where it's like a lazy, like a daisy cutter, low and hard straight across the goal, and it's like an XG outperformer, right? He's a monster in that regard because he'll shoot from anywhere and he'll get a goal from anywhere because he's just unlocked that shot, and it's almost becoming a sort of signature trademark sign of his, and I'm sure we'll see it for the Chelsea first team a couple years down the road. But look, super fast, exceptional speed and agility, really dangerous, and that's why he can operate on both wings. But for sure, he likes playing as that left wing position. And again, with the international break, he was training with the first team. Maresca called him up, and he was getting involved with the training, right? So potentially, are we going to see the debut soon? I think they're lining him up to definitely to feature, maybe in the Carabao Cup game that we've got coming up soon, or potentially maybe even being on the bench in some of the Premier League games. But I think a big season for him, especially in the academy. Him and Moika. Spoiler alert, Shin Moika is the next player, right? But I think these two players, big future. I think Cobham kind of see these guys as the two highest potential sort of attacking players that we've got lined up. And I think his debut this season is definitely coming up to try and tie him down to that professional contract, right? And obviously, everyone knows from Waker now, he's been making the rounds, especially if you're on X or Instagram, whatever it is. He's being hyped up. He's scoring goals in the academy for fun, scoring goals for England for fun. I think he's almost getting too good for the academy. And, we've already seen him play for Chelsea. Hasn't looked amazing, but obviously he was 17 playing striker. It's a tough position, especially when he's used to just playing academy games and we're putting him in, in front of men, really. He's just turned 18, so same birthday as Reggie Walsh, which is pretty cool. But just turned 18 today. He's going to feature at this point, at some points this season. I think the first senior goal is coming, whether that might be in the Carabao Cup. And I think, with the lapse injury, I wouldn't mind seeing him make the bench a bit more, because I think we're going to utilise Mark Gay a lot more now, especially we saw how good João Pedro plays as that 10 position, right? We need an extra body at striker. So if Mark Gay's playing at striker, if he gets injured or we want to change it up, we don't have any other strikers, right? We got rid of Jackson. So it makes sense for Schoenmaker to make the bench. We don't have to use him, but I think it's a striker, profile. He's banging it in, banging them for fun in the academy. Got a hat-trick against the Man City under-21s. Super athletic, physical forward. He's also starting to use his head a lot more now in terms of scoring with his head, right? But before, that was one of the weaknesses in his game. He was quite a complete forward, but his aerial and heading ability wasn't, quite at that level. But he's definitely sort of added that to his locker, like natural finishing instincts. And I think this season he's going to get his first senior goal. So whether that's in the Premier League, whether that's in the Carabao Cup, depends, where we play him, or maybe even, plays in some of the dead rubber Champions League games. Say we get qualified, we don't need to risk our top players, right? Let's give this guy a debut in the Champions League as well. You never know, he might get a goal there, and it's only going to help his confidence. But I think, he's either going to go loan to Strasbourg next year, or the club are going to sort of try to figure something out. But I think, we've got Satpayev coming as well next year. Don't know if both of them will go to Strasbourg, so it depends. Will Satpayev go to Strasbourg and Moika maybe go to the Championship, or maybe, depending how his development goes, maybe a lower team in the Premier League. Let's see what happens, but super interesting. He's my final player on this list, so these are the players I expect to have a big season, definitely make their debuts or get their first senior goals. And I think, look, if you don't know Sherm Waker by now, you're certainly going to find out soon. And I think a lot of the the rival fans, they're going to know what sort of talent we've got in our hands. Big future ahead, and I just hope the club give him a pathway to the first team, because it would be nice to get an academy striker. We're very good at developing centre backs or midfielders from the academy, strikers or maybe wingers. Hudson-Odoi looked unbelievable in the academy, but with that Achilles injury, it just didn't quite happen. Same with Loftus-Cheek, right? The injury set him back. So it would be really nice to see an academy striker. It's not normally we get someone from that position come through and really kill it. So I got high hopes for him. I think that the Chelsea hierarchy do as well. And look, he's been training with the first team a lot as well. So if he's not going to feature more, I think his days are coming. So super excited for Shumwaka. Let me know if I missed any players on this list. I only wanted to pick 5. There's a lot of other talent out there for sure. We're quite blessed, especially in the under 21s and under 18s. But for now, I think these are the 5 players who will probably have the most impact this season from the academy. So let me know who you think in the comments, boys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.